We're going to jump into this. All right. We're gonna roll to a start here this evening. I would like to begin though with a couple of they're really announcements. Would you rather call commercials? Would you guys listen to them better if I call them that? Like when you start a podcast on YouTube, you watch a couple of ads beforehand. It's kind of the same thing, right? Yeah, unskippable ads. This is premium content you're getting here. So, two things. First of all, I want to put in a personal plug for those of you who may be interested. You may remember a year ago down at the theater down here in town, we put on the Ditchman. Anybody remember the Ditchman? The sequel is coming up the weekend of October 19th and 20th. Now, this year we're doing it a little bit different. Where last year we did 2 Saturdays, this year we're doing a weekend. So it will be a Saturday night or a matinee on Sunday. So if you're interested in tickets, you can get them on the Grand Opera House website. Actually, the show stars Lorelai McAllister. Oh, her mom left before I got to say that. But so Lorelai's in it, and maybe other people who are here tonight are in it as well. So if you're interested in being a part of that, we'll be there, and you can get the tickets there and support a good cause. They were telling us that of everything they've done at the theater, for I don't know what year and a half they've been putting on performances, they said the Ditchman has been the single greatest money maker. Now, more money came in for other things, but since no one's getting paid in this production, it was 100% profit. So it ended up being the greatest money maker that they've done down there. So we're hoping to do the same for this one. So if you're interested, you can come down, and since I might have an in with some of the cast, we'll autograph your T-shirt or something, whatever it takes to get you there. But come on out and see it. It's a blast of a show. This year, if you saw last year's production, this year has a lot more monsters in it. So lots of creatures, lots of interesting creature designs, lots of creatures doing interesting things. So if you want to come out and see something from the zany mind of Joe Ginter, for any of you who know who he is, you know it's something crazy. But we're going to have a good time with it, and hope you'll come out to join us for that. All right, that's the unserious announcement. Now, the serious announcement is Corey Nelson, who is our contemporary worship guy, sent me a thing that's going on that I want to make you aware of. The weekend before the Ditchman, which is the weekend of October 11th through 13th, Auglaize County Fairgrounds over in Wapak is having what they're calling a worship weekend. So they're going to be at the fairgrounds. They're going to do worship events apparently all weekend. I only found out about this a couple of hours ago. But one of the things that they want to do is they want to he reached out to me for sponsorship, which obviously I was more than happy to agree to help him out. But one of the things they have is they have a thing where we can all the proceeds for the whole weekend are going to fight human trafficking. So everything about the whole weekend, all the offerings, anything collected throughout the course of the weekend is going to an organization that's going to get people out of human slavery and human trafficking. So they have set amounts, and I would like to make this become a Wayne Street thing where we sponsor one unit of this. It says what it costs once they find a person or a family in trafficking, to get them out of that into housing, take care of whatever needs and things they have, get them into education, job training and stuff. Costs about $3,800. So I would like for us, if any of you are interested in working with us on this, to come up with $3,800 to say, so we can say we got one family out of that hellacious nightmare. So if any of you are interested in working with us on that, and what kind of fundraiser or something we may do, because I feel like anymore all I ever do is ask for money. But I'd love to have that conversation with you. So pray about that. If that's something you'd like to help with, we would like to be able to say, hey, we got one family out. And we'll be even more awesome to say we got 2 families out, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But any of you who may be interested in helping with that, talk to me, and I'll get you in touch with Corey, and we'll see what we can do about that. All right. Is my 5 seconds up or whatever it was? 10 seconds. All right. All right, good. Jonah, what do you say? Enjoyed Jonah so far? Interested to see the last chapter? Because look, of everything that's happened in this book, from the freak storm to the whale to Jonah going in and turning an entire city upside down with one sentence, everything's happened up to this point. I can honestly say the weirdest part of the book we haven't gotten to yet. Okay? Because if you ever read Jonah chapter 4, you know it don't really get real weird until we get to this chapter. So we're going to talk about it a little bit tonight. And so we're going to spend the first half talking about a specific piece of chapter 4. And then Sunday, the sermon will be about, we're going to expand on what happens here in chapter 4 during the sermon. We're going to spend the second half of our time together tonight looking at the prodigal son. Because Jonah and the prodigal son actually have a lot in common. And so that's where Dr. Nutt and I are going to go with you guys for the second half of tonight. So, having said that, the piece tonight that I want to focus on, because I have to save something to talk about on Sunday, is I want to talk about what happens after Jonah realizes city's been saved. And I want to focus on what happens next, because I'm not really going to deal with that on Sunday. So I want to deal with it tonight so that you can have an understanding of it to plug it into what we're talking about on Sunday. That's coming up. So Jonah comes in. He says his one sentence, 40 days from now, Nineveh's toast. Good luck. Put your affairs in order. And it seems like almost immediately he starts looking around. And based on what I told you last Wednesday and last Sunday, as he's looking around, you tell me, what does he see? What does he see going on? Go ahead and talk to me. Say it. Repentance. Doing what? Repentance is what he sees. Doing what? Where in the burlap? Fasting, which none of us did any of that here tonight. All right. What else? King steps down from his throne, takes off his royal robes, goes out and sits in the trash. I mean, we're talking, they took this pretty seriously, which again, I can't say this enough times because it's just what happened. One sentence did that. The most wicked city on the face of the earth, because apparently God didn't set aside any other city to wipe off the face of the earth. So for whatever reason, this one had to be the worst one. Jonah spoke this many sentences and turned the whole thing around. They went from the most wicked place on the face of the earth to the most repentant place on the face of the earth in the time it took one guy to say, 40 days from now, Nineveh will be destroyed. Did anybody time that? 1 second, right? Amazing. And what a testimony to the power of God's word. And whatever that magic sentence is, I wish I could find it, because I would say it to you all. We would turn St. Mary's upside down, but that's a sermon from the other day. All right, so Jonah sees this. He's super ticked off and very, very upset about this, because as I have said enough times by now, you should know Jonah does not care about what? Nineveh. Do not care about that place. Not even a little. Not even this much. And Jonah is only in Nineveh and speaks this one sentence for one very simple reason. I am scared to death of whales. That's it. He has no other motivation. So he goes in, he speaks his word. If he finds out the city's been turned around, Jonah does not care. No, it's worse than that. Jonah is very mad about it. It's more than not caring. He does care, just in the opposite way. So he's super mad that everything is going on. And what does he say? I knew this is what you were going to do. That's why I didn't want to come in the first place. I knew you were a God of grace and mercy, and I, for one, am sick to death of it. You laugh? But that's essentially what he says. Okay? So he's super mad, and God comes along. Okay, so Jonah's having what I can only call a psychotic break. I mean, the guy is, at this point, he just had it with life. And he's really upset and saying all this stuff. So he just unloads on God. Then he gets to verse 4. So after having all this tantrum, I mean, you can see Jonah. I picture Jonah like, you ever seen the old Walt Disney cartoons when Donald Duck starts freaking out? That's the image I have in my mind. So he's doing a Donald Duck freak out, and he just I can't hardly understand him. He's spitting and all this stuff. And then verse 4 happens. And God replied, Is it right for you to be angry about this? I'm sure that calmed them right down, right? No, it's not. It's totally not right for me. No. So God comes along with that question, which we're going to talk about a lot on Sunday. So God asked that question, and then read ahead to verse 5. Then Jonah went out to the east side of the city. What did Jonah say? Nothing. Jonah's like, well, I am not interested in having this conversation, period. More about that on Sunday also. So he storms out to the east side of the city, and he makes a shelter. Why? Because he wants a front row seat for whatever's about to happen. I'm assuming he's what he considers to be a safe distance away. I don't know how far that is, but you can bet however far away that is, he can still see the city. You know, he may be beyond the suburbs. He may be out in the countryside, but you know if he goes like this, he can still see the city. Because he wants to know if it crumbles, if it crumbles into the ground, if fireball comes from heaven, if wild wildebeest come and knock all the buildings out, whatever's going to happen, I want to make sure I see it. Watch it. Not interested in talking to God. And then while he's out there, a couple things happen. Verse 6. So Jonah has just had this psychotic break. God asked him a question to which Jonah was not interested in talking about. Leaves. Sitting out there waiting, verse 6. And God arranged for a leafy plant to grow there. And soon it spread its broad leaves over Jonah's head, shading him from the sun. This eased his discomfort, and Jonah was very grateful for the plant. Honest to God, this is the only good thing that happens to him in this entire book. Am I wrong? I mean, nothing else good happens. Okay? But I want you to notice the word, because we're going to see this word come up a couple times. The word here is arranged. God arranged. Your translation may say something else. But the word here is arranged. 3 times, God is going to arrange for something. And I'll tell you, 4 things in this book God arranges. 3 of them are here. Would you guess what the other one was? What would you guess the other thing God arranged for Jonah was? The whale. You got it. God arranged. If you go back and look, it actually says that. It's the same word used 4 times. Arrange. So God arranged. So of all the things that God does here, including the whale in chapter 1, and then the 3 things that are going to be here, God arranged for all of them. And I'm pointing that out to say all 4 of those things, the whale, the plant, the worm, and the scorching east wind, all of those 4 things were things God arranged in response to what Jonah does. Okay? God arranged the whale because Jonah did something. What did Jonah do? Bye-bye. Oh, so Nineveh's over there? Well, I'm going this, okay? So Jonah decided to run. In response to that, God arranged a whale, seeming to suggest God would not have arranged such a thing had Jonah had been obedient in the first place. But since Jonah wasn't, arrangements had to be made. I mean, that sounds very mafia-like, but you get what I'm saying here. Okay? All right. Yeah. Provided. Yeah. Maybe this much better. Yeah. But the idea is it happened because of what it was in response to something Jonah did. Okay. So the plant grows up and whatever kind of plant is. Now, I'm trying to imagine what kind of a plant this is because we don't normally think of anybody have a shady plant in your yard? We normally call those trees. The word here is plant. I don't know why. But whatever it is, this shady plant, big leaves, nice plant, and only nice thing that happens to Jonah the entire book. Literally not one other nice thing happens for this poor man. So the plant grows up. So if God arranged for this, and I am contending that everything God arranges in the book of Jonah is all in response to something Jonah did, what did Jonah do here that God arranged the plant? This is an interesting question. What did Jonah do? Yes. God asked him a question, and I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to stay in this spot. going to stay still, and I'm going to stay quiet. What Jonah does is God again tries to engage Jonah with a question. You don't ask, you can ask a rhetorical question. I don't feel like God's question here was rhetorical, mainly because he's going to ask it again in a few minutes. So I don't think the question was rhetorical. I think God expected Jonah to answer the question. Is it right for you to be angry? And God wanted Jonah to say no, but spoiler alert, Jonah don't never say that. But God wanted to engage with Jonah. And the interesting thing is here, the first time was the whale. Now, I will contend the whale, as unpleasant as that was, saved Jonah's life. Because if any of you have ever been on a boat in a big storm, going overboard is not a great idea. So for him to be in a stormy sea, you don't normally survive that. And I would contend that without the whale, Jonah would have died. I know it's not a common interpretation of that, but that's what happened. I would say here, Jonah says, shut up. I don't care. Shut up. All right. I'm annoyed enough with you. Don't ask questions. It's going to poke me with a stick. So God's going to try something else. All right. You don't want to engage with the question? Fine. Let me try to comfort you a little bit. Here's a plant, a shade plant, whatever that is. And it's going to have big leaves, and it's going to ease the sun off of you. And it even says here, it eases discomfort, and Jonah was grateful for the plant. The only thing Jonah is ever grateful for in a story where 120,000 people get their lives saved. The only thing Jonah is ever grateful for is the plant. Okay? Those 120,000 people can quite literally burn in hell. I don't care about them. That's where we are. All right? So Jonah says, but he loves the plant. It eased Jonah's discomfort. He was very grateful for the plant. So he's grateful for the plant. He might have went from a 10 to a 9.75 on the anger scale. But what does he not do? What does Jonah not do? He never answers the question. He does not engage with God. He was grateful for the plant, but he wasn't grateful to the one who sent the plant. No engagement with God whatsoever. So that doesn't work. So let's move on to the next one. Verse 7. God also arranged for a worm. The next morning at dawn, the worm ate through the stem of the plant so that it withered away. Okay? Again, I have no idea what kind of worm this is. This shade plant eating worm shows up in the middle of the desert. Again, I don't know what it is. But this worm comes along, takes a bite out of the stem of the plant and kills the plant in like an hour. So it says it happened at dawn the next morning. So by the time the sun actually came up and he was looking for his shade plant, the shade plant was dead. So it's a fantastical worm, I guess. So the next thing God tried, if comforting didn't work, then God is going to try to discomfort him. All right, I'm going to take this thing away from you. So I gave you the thing. You didn't want to talk to him? Well, I'm going to take the thing away. See if I can get your attention now. See if now you're going to talk to me. So Jonah now went from 9.75 to 9.95 on the anger scale. And so he's super mad now. And the plant, the thing that he loved, the only thing that he seemed to care about in this entire story, was now gone. And God said, now would you like to engage? Jonah says, engage with who? Answer no. So, God was not done with arranging yet. Verse 8. And as the sun grew hot, God arranged, third time, for a scorching east wind to blow on Jonah. The sun beat down on his head, and he grew faint, and he wished to die. All right. At this point, even I'm like, God, can you just give the guy a day? Just a minute here, something. But God don't do that. God is aggressively uninterested in having this conversation. Or aggressively uninterested in leaving him alone is what I mean. Now, God's interest in having the conversation is equaled only by Jonah's interest in not having the conversation. Okay, so the next thing that Jonah tries is this scorching east wind. Which, you ever been outside when it's like super hot and even the breeze is hot? I mean, that's what I'm imagining going on here. Super unpleasant. Kind of makes me wonder, Jonah, maybe if you'd have went to the west side of the city, I'm just saying, maybe the east wind wouldn't blow on you there. I don't know. But he's very discomforted. Now, what I want to draw a quick parallel to here is, remember where he's at. He's in Nineveh. He is expecting at any second something catastrophic is going to happen. Any minute, it's just going to be, Independence Day, when that movie Independence Day, where the laser beam comes down and wipes out the whole city. Any second, he thinks that's going to happen. When all that actually happens is he gets a plant, then he gets an evil yet very hungry worm, then he gets a scorching east wind. And as you can tell, he's not horrendously thrilled with this. But think about what he was, I'm going to go so far as say what he was wanting to happen. He wanted shock and awe. Well, that's not this. Is this aggravating? Would I have been irritated off the charts at this? Susan's laughing now because she knows I would have been. Irritated to the maximum and then like 2 more points above that. Because that's how things go. But I have to point out, he's not dead. And neither is anybody else. Because that was what was supposed to happen. But all he's getting here is he's getting pursued by God. God was not going to leave him alone. Because God is saying, I know you're frustrated. I know that the existence of the city of Nineveh is an anathema to you. It is what you do not want. We're going to talk about why that is on Sunday. What was Jonah's problem with Nineveh? One of the topics for Sunday. But suffice it to say, for our purposes this evening, the existence of Nineveh became a personal issue for Jonah. Because the existence of Nineveh meant something that Jonah didn't want any part of. Okay? So he's very, very angry. But what I want you to see is, while it does seem a little petty of God, I mean, I'll admit there's a level here where I'm going, come on, God, cut the guy a break. But at the same time, God could have just been like, hey, thanks for that one sentence, Jonah. Have a nice life. And could have left. Just left Jonah sit out there and be mad. Could have. But God stays with him. Doesn't leave. Continues to pursue him to say, I want to talk about this. And I don't want you to lie to me and say, it's fine. Because I know, according to you, it's not. Now, I have my own opinions about that. They don't necessarily agree with yours, and that's something we're going to talk about. But I want to engage with you about this. So you can ignore me, turn your back to me. I can ask you a question. You can turn around, pretend like you didn't hear. Fine, you can do that. But we're not done talking about this yet. At least, I'm not done talking about this yet. I'm not. And what I want you to see about that for our purposes tonight, we're going to pick this theme up on Sunday, is what I want you to see from this is God could very well have said, thanks for saving the city, and left, but he didn't. Saving Nineveh was obviously one of God's mission parameters here, but saving Nineveh was not all God was after. He kept after Jonah to say, I want to talk about this. And I don't want you to lie to me. Are you super mad? I want you to tell me that. I want to hear you say how frustrated you are. I want to hear you say how angry you are that Nineveh still exists. I want to hear that from you. And Jonah's like, I remember last time I didn't do what you said. And I remember what happened then. And I mean, that's like number one thing, is not to do that again. God does not shy away from that here. God could have come along and punished Jonah, but I don't think the plant, and I don't think the worm, and I don't think the scorching east wind, and I would go so far as say, I don't even think the whale was punishment for Jonah. It's all about God saying, you and I still need to talk, buddy. I'm not quite done with you yet. I'm not ready to cut you loose. I'm not ready for this to be over. I want to talk, and I want you to look what happens here. I'm going to start reading here on verse 8. And as the sun grew hot, God arranged for a scorching east wind to blow on Jonah. The sun beat down on his head until he grew faint and wished to die. Death is certainly better than living like this, he exclaimed. Who did he exclaim it to? He already told us nobody's there. He's like, all right, God, you want to talk about this? Let me tell you where I'm at. I'm tired of living because you keep letting me down. God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? Yes, Jonah retorted, even angry enough to die. Jonah's at the end of his rope. He is, we're frustration. We're off the scale. He feels betrayed. He feels let down. He feels frustrated. He feels like, look, those people down there were so wicked, you were ready to burn them off the face of the earth. I say one sentence to them to tell them to get their affairs together, and they decide to repent, and you're throwing a party for them. And you killed my plant. Is that fair? The answer is no. It is not fair. And God said, I have broad shoulders, buddy. Let me have it. God is not shying away. I want you to see, God is not shying away from this conversation. Now, Jonah may not be uber thrilled with what he hears from it, but God is not saying, you better stop saying this, pal. God isn't saying, shut up. God is saying, say it. If you feel it, say it. I'm not afraid of it. I already know it. You're not telling me something I don't already know. What do you think you're keeping from me here, little man? But the idea is as long as Jonah holds that back, who's it hurting? It ain't hurting God. God is going to continue to try to, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to use the word provoke. He's trying to provoke Jonah. So Jonah will say what God already knows, which is very interesting. And then we get a verse that better sound familiar to you. This is verse 11. This is God speaking. But Nineveh has more than 120,000 people living in spiritual darkness, not to mention all the animals. Shouldn't I feel sorry for such a great city? End of the book. That's it. So the question is, what did Jonah do? I would say to be continued, but it's not. That's it. That's the whole story. That's the challenge, friends. What does Jonah do? And that's why the story is so powerful, is knowing what you know about the story now. That Jonah, who has been, at the brink of a nervous breakdown for 4 chapters now. And honestly, anybody who's been paying attention, you've been here for 4 weeks now. We've had 4 weeks here. We'll have 4 weeks on Sunday and there on him. That's 8 lessons in 4 weeks that you guys have had on him. You have to see that it's tough to argue with where Jonah's at. The guy's been through it. And he's been through a tough time. And what God keeps saying to him is, say it. Don't keep it from me. Let's talk this out. Because the longer you try to hold this back from me, you're only hurting yourself. I heard him, and I've said this before, so some of you may have heard this before, but the warning of Jonah is the warning about bitterness. You guys know what bitterness actually is? Let me define bitterness for you. Bitterness is poison that we drink hoping the other person will die. That's what bitterness is. And God is saying, Jonah, don't do that to yourself. Don't hold this in. I already know. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh my, you're really mad. I'm not going to be shocked by that. But as long as Jonah is protecting God from his wrath, which God's response to Jonah's wrath is, really, right? What's Jonah going to do? But God is taking this seriously. How many of you, don't anybody raise your hand to this question, but this is what is known as a rhetorical question. How many of you, either at your work or with your kids or with your family or with your spouse at some point, you knew they were mad, so you just avoided the conversation? Everybody's like, not me, at least not in the last 5 minutes, right? Okay, we've all done that at one time or another. And I got to tell you, that's not always a bad thing to do. But the idea here is that there are going to be times when there are strong feelings that you have, and God is going to show a whole lot more mercy than your spouse may, or your kids may, or your coworkers, or especially your boss may show. But the idea is you can only hold that for so long until that starts to become a part of who you are. And suddenly that bitterness hardens into malice, hardens into dejection, and pretty soon you start carrying that anger around in your pocket. And every so often, you want to pull that thing out and polish it up, put it back. Because actually, you don't put it here in your pocket. You know where you put it? You put it right here. You know what you call it? A chip that you carry right there on your shoulder. And God's saying, these things are pretty heavy. I prefer you not carry that around. Jonah, let's talk this out. Let's have a conversation. Let me enlighten you on my side of this. Now, we may all want to say, what possible justification could God have for what he does here? Answer is, I say let God let God speak his peace. I'm not going to speak, I will speak on behalf of God, but I am not taking God's place to speak for him. If you want to come and ask me the question, I'll be glad to speak from Tim on that. But I'm not going to tell you what God thinks, because God thinks what God thinks. And I'm not going to be so presumptuous to say I'm the only one here that's figured that out. So that's what the message of the book of Jonah is. Be careful about what you're carrying around, about bitterness you're taking with you, because God may want to talk about something that you don't want to talk about. Now, look, there may also come a time when you want to talk about something God's not so interested in discussing. God may have said, I've kind of ruled on this thing, and you're like, well, let's go best out of 3. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that method either. But the idea here is that there's going to come a time, and please forgive me for what I'm about to say, but we're all seasoned enough, been around the block enough times, that I'm sure it's happened multiple times in your life where something has happened and you decided to protect God from your feelings. I highly recommend not doing that. Yes, there are people in your life that you should protect from your feelings, because you're going to have to be an adult sometimes. Sorry, it's just part of the deal. But you don't have to be that way with God. Don't carry that stuff around, because it can be really heavy and it can start to smell bad too. Questions about that? I said all of that. I have talked for a half an hour uninterrupted, and I have not given away the sermon on Sunday. Okay, so come. I know what you think. Man, we've heard it all. No, you haven't. Come back. We're gonna hit it again. Absolutely. Because God was very clear with what he wanted. Go to Nineveh, pronounce it. It wasn't like Jonah could say, well, I didn't understand. We've all heard that one. And but the problem is that God is able to deal with infinite grace and mercy. Parents can't. I'm saying that to all of y'all. Hear that. Your role as a parent is not to be God. But the concept is much the same. God had a rebellious follower, and sometimes you got to provoke to get the conversation started. And clearly that's what God was trying to do, because there's no other reason for the plant to grow and the worm to kill it and the east wind to blow on his head, and it's provoking to get him to talk. You wanted to spur the conversation. So thank you for that. Questions? Any other questions? You guys like Jonah? Think you're more like Jonah than you realized? Yeah, that actually through this study, that's what I found is, man, he and I are not as different as I thought. We may not have done the underwater travel the same, but most of the rest of it, he and I have done a lot of the same stuff. So, all right, we're going to come to a moment of transition, and we're going to go to the prodigal son, which I bet now you can probably already see the link. But we're going to talk about the parable of the prodigal son. Dr. Nutt's going to assist me with that. Anybody who wants to go downstairs or help with the kids, you're welcome to step out and do that. And give me a moment here to turn the corner.